During the 18th century, a peaceful colony of settlers enjoying the island treasures they discovered suddenly had their serenity interrupted. The invaders were those who called themselves the Pirates of the Sea. For years, the pirates had been searching for the same buried treasures that the settlers were now claiming as their own. This, of course, disturbed the pirates, as they knew the doubloons the settlers found had belonged to their ancestors. The first to hear the news that the settlers had discovered treasure was Captain Redbeard, captain of the pirate ship Black Seas Barracuda. The captain decided to gather his men, load his cannons, and set sail to reclaim the pirate treasures from the Eldorado Fortress. Little did the pirates know, however, that the settlers had Governor Broadside guarding the gold, and that they would have to deal with him first if they wanted it. The governor lived for the day he would have to defend the Eldorado Fortress and the gold. What he did not know was that the day of confrontation would be coming soon.
Of all the pirates who sailed the seas during the golden age of piracy, from dark-eyed Kate Putnam to Captain Archibald, one name stands out as the most notorious and influential buccaneer in history: Captain Redbeard. His career was longer than any other pirate. He captured hundreds of ships and won, lost, hunted, and hid vast fortunes over his lifetime. His list of friends was short, and his list of enemies long, though they intertwined so much that it was often hard to tell whose side he was on. In this 8-part documentary series, we'll piece together lore for the LEGO sets, comics, audio dramas, and video games to tell the story of one of the most beloved figures in LEGO history, Captain Redbeard. While Captain Roger Redbeard has led an eventful and adventurous life up to this point, it could be argued that this is where his story truly begins. Redbeard had regained all of his early notoriety, but while he was still a pirate of note, he was one buccaneer among many. What would it take for this freewheeling freebooter to become a feared and influential leader among the pirates of the Caribbean? The answer to that question came when a group of settlers on one of the outlying islands discovered a buried chest of doubloons and gems hidden by Redbeard's own ancestors, part of the same hoard he had been searching for his entire life. It didn't take long for word of the settlers' good fortune to reach the taverns of Forbidden Island and the ears of Captain Redbeard. The Redbeard who received this news was an almost entirely different man than the constantly drunk, out-of-shape, patchy-beard pirate he had been during the Golden Medallion adventure. A healthy diet and exercise habits had transformed the captain. His bright red beard had fully returned, leaving no doubt as to his identity. And while he often complained about his failing eyesight, he was known to keep himself ship-shape by swinging from the ship's mast and diving into the water, cannonball style. What else? The savvy captain had a new lease on life. Not only did news of the settlers' discovery awaken Redbeard's sense of family pride, it seems to have ignited a dormant sense of ambition. This chest of doubloons wasn't just a potential fortune for Redbeard, it was the birthright of many of the Forbidden Island pirates. Redbeard wasn't the only one who was related to the buccaneers who had buried it long ago. Not only were several of his family members influential pirates themselves, the crews of every renegade vessel in the tropical sea were peppered with pirates who were descended from those long-ago raiders. And for those that weren't, well, they probably weren't above claiming an ancestral right to get a share of the treasure themselves. Using the promise of reclaiming what was rightfully theirs, Redbeard rallied the pirates at the Forbidden Island enclave, uniting them in an invasion of the settlers' island home. The earlier pirate alliances Redbeard's crew had spearheaded to keep Broadside in office were only a dress rehearsal for this new offensive. The United Pirates called themselves the LEGOLAND Pirates of the Sea. Redbeard was no longer one pirate captain among many, but the pirates' de facto leader and commodore. The Imperial settlers were unprepared for what was to come. While the pirates had targeted shipping in the tropical sea for decades, most of the settlers on outlying islands lived peaceful lives, far from the battles between the pirates and Bluecoats. If anything, Redbeard and his crew had become folk heroes who, like Robin Hood of old, would steal from their greedy governors to give back to the people. But everything changed when the pirates attacked. Redbeard's incursions into Imperial territory appear to have devastated the settlements. During this time, many of the Imperial outposts and mines in the northern islands, the territory of Governor McGair, were completely abandoned, seemingly including McGair's home base on John Silver Island, where mining operations would halt completely. Control of the island would eventually fall to One Leg, a notorious ruffian and card player in Penzance and an associate of Redbeard. Perhaps due to a combination of lost territory and interrupted shipping, the settlers on Sabatina experienced food shortages during this time. This was a crisis that even Broadside, a well-known glutton, could appreciate. Seeing McGair's power base so reduced likely humbled him as well. The tacit understanding Broadside had had with the pirates that allowed him to rule uncontested was gone. These attacks amounted to acts of war against the Imperial settlements under his protection. This, combined with his growing rivalry with Redbeard and lingering guilt at his treatment of William Cavendish, seems to have finally forced the once complacent governor into an active defender and protector of his territories. While the settlers were taken off guard by the initial invasion, the pirates were unable to seize the chest of ancestral gold that had sparked the conflict. Governor Broadside dispatched the Caribbean Clipper to take the treasure to his stronghold, Eldorado Fortress, where it could be safely guarded. The sailors of the Clipper weren't the typical island recruits. While they were known as a merry crew, they took great pride in their mission and were determined to escort the treasure safely back to Sabatina, no matter what the pirates had planned. Given his avaricious nature, it's entirely possible that Broadside's motives for seizing the treasure weren't entirely due to his sense of gubernatorial responsibility, though the neighboring island the gold was found on was under his jurisdiction. But in addition to any designs he may have had on the treasure, Broadside's greatest hope was that Redbeard would come in search of the chest. Without the iron ram and with his forces spread thin to protect the other islands, moving in force against the pirate stronghold on Forbidden Island was unlikely. But if he couldn't go to Redbeard, he could make the pirate come to him. The once cowardly governor now lived for the inevitable confrontation that would follow. He wanted to repay the embarrassments Redbeard had caused him over the years. The loss of the iron ram and the Madonna's treasure were probably at the forefront of his mind. During a confrontation off Shark Island, the Black Seas Barracuda faced off against the Caribbean Clipper in a heavy storm. Just before the battle, their young cabin boy Jimbo was swept overboard. He escaped Shark Island by building a raft out of materials buried by previous castaways. Once the gold arrived in Port Royal, Broadside took no chances with the treasure and ordered it hidden away in a secret passageway carved in the stone foundations of the fortress. Where the Eldorado Fortress was once thought to be impenetrable, the pirates now targeted the stronghold at every opportunity. One morning, the soldiers at the recently constructed outpost on Sabre Island sighted the Black Seas Barracuda. They were surprised to see the pirates cruising openly so far from their home base. They used flares to signal the governor at Eldorado Fortress. As the ship sailed closer, the soldiers of Eldorado couldn't see any movement above deck and suspected that the pirates were asleep below. Broadside was elated at the opportunity to take Redbeard off guard. He set sail on the Caribbean Clipper, taking most of the soldiers stationed at the fortress with him, all armed to the teeth. As Broadside boarded the Barracuda, he didn't know that there were only 2 pirates aboard, both of whom had already slipped overboard and hid themselves alongside the ship, taking their chances that the sharks would ignore them. Meanwhile, Redbeard and the rest of his men were aboard a few rowboats that were already making their way to the governor's fort. Broadside was excited to have captured the Barracuda, and even better, he was able to recover a chest of treasure stolen by Redbeard, possibly the same one the pirate had bargained away from him on threat of starvation after the adventure on the Island of Mist. But while Broadside was celebrating, the pirates had overcome the few remaining guards at Eldorado Fortress and hoisted the Jolly Roger from the ramparts. They proceeded to free every prisoner in Broadside's dungeons and strip the fort of everything of value they could carry. Broadside realized his mistake and returned to the Clipper to sail back to Sabatina. Seeing this, Redbeard signaled the 2 pirates still concealed alongside the Barracuda, and they fired cannon shots that took out the Clipper's masts, leaving her dead in the water. Broadside was forced to watch helplessly as the Barracuda picked up Redbeard and his men, seeing the smiling captain sailing away with everything of value from the fortress that they could carry. The Barracuda soon returned for another attempt on the fortress. Redbeard found his dignity tested when, after ordering his crew to drop anchor just off Sabatina, his peg leg caught in the anchor chain and he was dragged overboard. Redbeard unintentionally hooked a shark before his men pulled him back aboard, but Will was able to use a deck cannon to send the sea creature flying over Eldorado Fortress, the sight of which undoubtedly perplexed Broadside and his soldiers. Later, Broadside was able to capture Redbeard and hold him in the fortress. Will, Rummy, and other members of the crew broke into the fort to rescue him. Finding themselves without the key to the captain's jail cell, Will improvised with some barrels of gunpowder, with explosive results. Redbeard was rescued, for the most part. Broadside's only consolation at these embarrassing invasions was that the pirates had failed to find the secret passageway leading to the gold. With the gold hidden away in the harbor around Eldorado Fortress patrolled by De Martinet and the tiny but well-armed harbor sentry, the conflict between the pirates and the Bluecoats was at a stalemate once more. Eldorado Fortress had proved vulnerable time and again, but in order to find the treasure, Redbeard would have to hold the fortress long enough to search the structure to its foundations. Broadside would be unable to move the treasure himself, as any ships departing with the chest aboard would make themselves easy targets for the newly organized pirates. Redbeard, for his part, appeared to be in no hurry to remove the treasure from Eldorado. The longer the chest remained at the fortress as a symbol for the pirates to rally behind, the more power Redbeard would have over his brethren. Redbeard was beginning to accumulate more wealth and power than ever before. He successfully stole a chest of doubloons from the king's forces and hid the treasure with help from Anne and another pirate. 2 soldiers attempted to retrieve the gold, but the pirates were warned by a timely intervention from the captain's parrot, Popsy. During this time, Redbeard grew so infamous that he was even invited back to the European mainland at the request of the false king Jan de Hulepert of Sefeniken. The king had hoped to hire Redbeard's pirates as mercenaries to deal with the Forestmen Renegades, a group whose origins dated back to the time of Robin Hood. For centuries, they had been striking out from their camouflaged fortress outposts to plunder the coffers of European royalty. Instead of capturing the Forestmen, however, Redbeard met with their leader Shroukte Dirk. Recognizing a kindred spirit in his fellow freebooter, Redbeard signed a non-aggression pact with the Forestmen, and dispatched his parrot Popsy as a messenger to inform all the ships in his growing pirate fleet. Defying yet another monarch emboldened Redbeard, and not without reason. He already had influence over legions of pirates and a number of ships, making the LEGOLAND Pirates of the Sea nearly a nation in their own right. Redbeard began scheming to extend his reach beyond the Caribbean. He planned to construct a second flagship, which would be known as the Skull's Eye schooner. Larger and more powerful than the Barracuda, Redbeard planned to use the Skull's Eye to target Imperial shipping in the East Indies. But Redbeard needed more gold to fund his ambitions. The fact that one of his ancestors' chests had surfaced meant that there were more to be found, including his grandfather's personal fortune. And the clock was ticking. Settlers soon discovered another chest of thousands of gold coins for Broadside and secured it in the basement of their recently constructed bastion on Sabre Island. Redbeard launched an attack on Sabre Island from the pirates' newly established base on Shipwreck Island, leading to another battle with the Caribbean Clipper. But the treasure remained safely secured underground. With 2 chests held by the Bluecoats, it would be a race against time to find the rest of the tropical sea treasure before Broadside's forces did. Highly motivated, Redbeard now turned his attention back to treasure hunting. After their close call on Shipwreck Island during the Golden Medallion adventure, Will had attempted to deter the captain from further expeditions to volcanic islands, but one map, possibly leading to the treasure of Captain Snarlface Garcia, proved too promising to pass up. It's possible that Will now hoped the map would distract Redbeard from taking more aggressive actions against the Imperial settlers. But after setting out to recover the treasure, the Black Seas Barracuda was attacked by Broadside's Caribbean Clipper. Worse, Spinoza chose that moment to return to the Bluecoats, taking the treasure map with him. Redbeard, in one of his typical displays of temper, set Will adrift on the castaway's raft, only to be caught and sentenced to walk the plank during Broadside's own voyage to find the treasure. Redbeard was rescued from a watery grave by Will, and the two managed to recover the treasure after Broadside and his soldiers fled from the erupting volcano, just as they had on Shipwreck Island. In the meantime, Redbeard sought out the seaweed treasure of the notorious pirate prankster Captain Riddle. He was disappointed, but not terribly surprised when it turned out to be a chest full of seaweed. The only witnesses to his embarrassment were the 2 shipwreck spies for Governor Broadside, Rick Biltmore, and his dog, Comet, were later picked up by one of the Bluecoat clippers. While Redbeard still had the allegiance of the pirates of Forbidden Island and Shipwreck Island, the captain had become more secretive and isolated. Rumblings of mutiny had begun among certain members of his crew, possibly encouraged by Captain Fowl, who would have been loath to accept Redbeard as the pirates' leader. Redbeard decided to move his headquarters from the pirate nest on Forbidden Island and sought out a new base to serve as his private command post and exclusive haven for the Barracuda. Redbeard located a rocky island believed to be off the coast of Jamaica and fortified a ruined structure in what became known as Pirates' Cove. From this rock island refuge, Redbeard could direct the activities of pirates in all three enclaves. Redbeard secured his treasures underneath a secret trapdoor in the fort, trusting only his parrot Popsy with its location. The captain had become increasingly reliant on the bird as his trust in his own crew decreased. Many would-be mutineers met their end on this isolated island, where even if they escaped over the fort's 2 rope suspension bridges, they would have the sharks to contend with. 2 pirates who joined the crew of the Barracuda here were a set of twins named Port and Starboard Broadside. If they were related to the Broadsides of Sabatina, this was a notable defiance of their more privileged relatives. Redbeard's remote refuge became infamous, and Governor Broadside was determined to find it. One source of intelligence were the Bluecoats, where the pirates arrested during the many battles with Redbeard's forces. By this point, they had arrested so many pirates that the Bluecoats needed new locations to hold them for questioning. In response, Broadside constructed several small prisons during this time. The settlers had already begun fortifying their existing structures against gold-seeking pirates, including a dockside inn frequented by the soldiers in peacetime. With the installation of a small jail cell, the inn became known as the Lagoon Lockup. Will was unfortunate enough to be captured and imprisoned here, leaving Redbeard without his second-in-command. The governor was particularly proud of another newly constructed prison and bragged that no one could escape its stone walls. It became known as Broadside's Brig. Redbeard sent Popsy to spy on the soldiers stationed here. From their conversations, Redbeard was able to learn of a treasure that Broadside had hidden in the mountains. He then set sail to retrieve it on the Black Seas Barracuda and brought it back to Rock Island Refuge. Broadside also turned to his network of spies and informants for information. One of his known tools of espionage was a clever disk that allowed him to send orders in code. Copies of this code disk were provided to Lieutenant de Martinet and other subordinates for decoding. Even if Broadside's messages were intercepted by Redbeard's pirates, they would be indecipherable. Through these means, the governor obtained a map to Rock Island Refuge's location. He sent his spies, Brick Biltmore and Comet, to recover the Imperial treasure Redbeard had recently stolen, only to be spotted by a parrot. After nearly walking the plank, the crew escaped, but without the treasure. With his spies revealed, Broadside launched an attack on Rock Island Refuge. The pirates didn't expect to be discovered, and the Bluecoats managed to catch the Black Seas Barracuda before she could get underway. But Redbeard took advantage of the situation and boarded the Caribbean Clipper during the battle, escaping with a chest of the governor's treasure while the Bluecoat soldiers were attacking. Unfortunately, the attack failed, and the refuge remained a major base for the pirates. Not long after the battle, Redbeard captured a small sailboat and set out to free Will from the Lagoon Lockup. The inn that had been part of the original structure was still in operation, and the guards were preoccupied with food and drink, allowing Redbeard to sail in and help Will escape from his cell. The two had to sail away quickly to avoid the lockup's cannon. This wouldn't be the last time Will ended up in prison. Once again, Will came into possession of a particularly precious treasure map, but was captured and imprisoned in the Eldorado Fortress. Redbeard deployed the Barracuda to draw the Bluecoats' fire while he snuck into the fortress to free Will. They escaped to Rock Island Refuge with the map, which may have led to their next adventure, an expedition to Pirate Island. During this time, Redbeard's raids had grown even more ambitious as he captured 2 large galleons. He sunk one and seized the other, a 3-masted 26-gun vessel, his largest command to date. Redbeard delegated command of the Barracuda to other pirate captains and divided his time between the Barracuda and the larger galleon. Before setting sail for Pirate Island, Will and Redbeard returned to the Barracuda to dine on Flashfork's hot rat stew. That night, Fowl's pirates crept aboard the ship, and a young member of Redbeard's crew overheard their mutinous plot. Unsurprisingly, Captain Fowl and Culverin were not happy with Redbeard's newly established dominance over the pirates. They attempted to incite a mutiny among Redbeard's crew and steal the map for themselves. The quick-thinking crew member was able to steal the map and reveal the traitor's plans. Redbeard was furious and made the pair walk the plank, seemingly ending his long rivalry and eliminating one of the major competitors to his leadership. While Redbeard proceeded onward, the Barracuda's captain consulted a pirate named Pegleg about the best course of action to proceed to Pirate Island, avoid Broadside's ship, and rendezvous at the pirates' base before continuing on to the treasure. Unfortunately, they were attacked by the governor's ship and had to change course. With Broadside distracted, Redbeard arrived at Pirate Island, where his crew enjoyed an evening of dancing and music. The next morning, he led the crew in a set of training exercises at their base. With his young crew member leading the way, Redbeard guided the pirates in an expedition through the jungles of Paradise Canyon. In a hidden cave, Redbeard found the treasure he was looking for, ensuring the pirates would be well funded as their captain executed the next stage of his plan. Bosun Will had stuck by Redbeard throughout his rise to power. He was fully grown by this time and was known to swap out some of his signature red clothes for blue and white alternatives. Will appears to have been keenly aware of Redbeard's family expectations regarding facial hair, as he eventually grew a mustache in the style of many of the pirates he had grown up with. He and Spinoza were entrusted with important tasks by Redbeard, including burying the captain's treasure and spy missions to Saber Island to look for opportunities to retrieve Broadside's hidden treasure. They were far from the first spies on the island, as a pirate had already tried to infiltrate the fort, disguised as one of the soldiers. Among the Bluecoats stationed on the island was Lieutenant de Martinet, who was as eager as ever to see Redbeard and his pirates pay for all the past humiliations he had suffered at their hands. He had recently received a coded message from the governor reading, "Sink all the pirate ships you meet," and he was determined to do just that. De Martinet was well aware of Redbeard's spies and set a trap that would end up costing the captain dearly. When Governor Broadside requested that the treasure on Saber Island be moved to the Eldorado Fortress, de Martinet saw his chance. He allowed Will to witness the treasure being stowed aboard the Caribbean clipper and claimed that they had missed the tide, allowing Will time to travel to Forbidden Island to tell Redbeard about the treasure. Will arrived just as a massive storm hit Forbidden Island, damaging the pirates' fortifications. He managed to make it through, and the next day the Barracuda set sail in pursuit of the clipper. Redbeard couldn't have known that among the sharks following the ship was one who was determined specifically to bite off his other leg. Presumably, this was the same shark who had bitten off his leg at Shark Island years before. Will, as usual, had a clever plan to find the governor's ship. He knew it would have to cross La Chapelle des Poupées, and that there was a secret passage through this chain of islands that would allow them to catch up to the clipper. But in order to do so, they would have to travel through mystical waters watched over by Poseidon himself. Meanwhile, on the clipper, de Martinet revealed his plan to the captain and his sailors. Not only did the lieutenant not fear a pirate attack, he was hoping that Redbeard would show himself, so that de Martinet could spring his trap. He ordered the clipper to drop anchor near Blackhead Rock, and took it upon himself to row his tiny harbor sentry boat out behind the rock. Just then, the Barracuda appeared, and Redbeard ordered his crew to attack. He led a boarding party onto the clipper, and a vicious fight ensued. Will blasted his way into the ship's hold and found the chest, but instead of the gold, they found a message from de Martinet. "Redbeard, you are the worst of failed pirates, and you have just fallen into a trap. Lieutenant de Martinet." At the same time, de Martinet emerged from hiding and targeted the Barracuda with the sentry's cannon at point-blank range. The vessel began to take on water, and Will and Redbeard abandoned the battle to try and save their ship. De Martinet was picked up by the clipper's crew, while the pirates were forced to save themselves on board the castaways' raft. Redbeard was absolutely furious at Will for having led them into a trap that had wrecked the Barracuda. He threatened Will with serious bodily harm and told him to get out of his sight. Cursing Redbeard's ungrateful rage, Will and Spinoza drifted away from the wreckage in a barrel as the sharks closed in. De Martinet revealed that he had emptied the chest and hidden the gold in one of the clipper's barrels after the treasure had been loaded. They returned to Eldorado Fortress victorious. The Bluecoats were proud that their commander had beaten Redbeard at last, and the fortress erupted in cheers when de Martinet revealed the hidden treasure. De Martinet had come a long way from the soldier who had surrendered to Redbeard on the golden loot. He seemed destined to be remembered among such pirate destroyers as Horatio Hubbs and Colonel Vendette. Thanks to de Martinet, Broadside regained his reputation as a capable military commander who could handle pirates. What had begun as a convenient lie to his imperial overseers was quickly becoming the truth. But the victory was overshadowed by the looming threat of starvation for the settlers on Sabatina as the food shortages continued. Possibly as a sign that Broadside had not entirely reformed from his old ways, the governor seems to have turned to the king for aid, rather than dip into the pirate treasures held in Eldorado Fortress. With the future of the king's settlements in the Caribbean threatened, and the pirate Redbeard apparently defeated, it seemed that the time had finally come for the king to retrieve the millions of dollars worth of treasure he had hidden in the tropical sea years before. He called to duty his finest soldiers, the Imperial Guard, and his trusted commander, Admiral Woodhouse, to guide his Imperial flagship, the HMS Sea Lion, on its journey across miles of ocean to retrieve the treasure. The Imperial Guard were used to exploring distant waters, but they were unprepared for what awaited them in the tropical sea. Because, unbeknownst to the Imperials, Redbeard had survived the shark-infested waters off Blackhead Rock. Not only that, his crew was able to salvage the Barracuda, piecing her back together to make her seaworthy once more. With his stronghold and Rock Island refuge still intact, and his second flagship nearing completion, Redbeard was in a position to bring down a reign of terror on the unsuspecting Imperial forces. We hope you've enjoyed Part 5 of our 8-part biography of Captain Redbeard. Do you have any of the sets we've covered here? How did you play with LEGO Pirates? Let me know in the comments, and please like and subscribe. And check out some of the other videos on our channel. If you can support us on our new Patreon page, you'll be able to help bring more of this kind of content to the channel. In return, you'll get your name in the credits, show notes for each episode, and early access to videos. But no matter what, I appreciate each and every viewer, especially those of you who stick it out for the whole episode, so once again, thank you.